Hello, everybody, and welcome back. Today, we are talking about the Democratic Socialists because they have released their party platform, and it is another day in Clown World. Welcome back to Clown World, my friends, the show that never ends. So, their platform, while they probably worked on it intensely to make sure it said all the right things, and they believe that it's going to attract people, when you dig into it, which we are going to do today, calls for nothing except the complete destruction of America. That's right, folks. It's not just getting rid of Trump. It's not just, putting good people into power. No, no. It is the destruction of America, our society, and that will trickle all the way down to your local community. How many people are in your city? Millions? Or are you in a little small town of a few hundred? Your small town will feel it. My family actually comes from an island off the coast of Maine where the current population is about 400, give or take. They will feel it. That's the extent of the changes that the Democratic Socialists want. It's not just president or Senate or whatever, or these horrible Supreme Court justices who vote in ways we don't like. No, no. It is the destruction of your society all the way down to the bottom level. And it will be a complete collapse and chaos and anarchy. They think it's going to be a nice transition of power and the revolution and things will be good, but no, as we will find out today, that is probably not what would happen if we let them have their way. They are a threat to America. They are a threat to society. Am I calling them out as terrorists? Pretty close to it, though. They want a complete collapse of society and a rebuilding of society in their image. Oh, wait a minute. What does that sound like? Oh, shit. That sounds just like the Christians that they hate, who they say force their lives on everybody and want everyone to be a Christian. Wow. Yet you want everyone to look like you and be in your little socialist Marxist world. Funny how we become our enemies. Or we're just stupid. Both of them, actually. Who are they like? Also, not just like the Christians, but they're also like Muslims coming into America who want Sharia law. Sharia law has a rule. Excuse me. Sharia law has a rule, and it says that there is no law above the Sharia law. It is above the laws of any country it is in. It is a complete overthrow of society. And today, you might say it's not a threat. But wait, because what happens is eventually you have a Sharia court. Eventually you have the Sharia laws. And you may say, well, that's only for Muslims. But wait, it's already happening in England where the laws start to expand to non Muslims. Well, technically, you're not under the law, but you should respect our law. So when we ban dogs from the neighborhood, well, you should do it too out of respect. And if you don't, you're a bigot and you're a racist and you're Islamophobe. That's how it starts. And then eventually they start making laws which are very Sharia law like. But first they say it's just respect, and then they rope you in. I saw a video in England where women were being stopped by the police from walking down a street in front of a temple during prayers because it was going to upset the people in the temple. Woman protested in this video, and the cop was like, no, I'll arrest you if you go forth. So already we see non-Muslims having to obey Sharia law. They are a threat to America, and that's just like what the Democrat socialists are doing. Their rule of law will be not a fun playground. So we're going to dissect their rule of law today. Well, sorry, we're going to dissect their agenda today. And I'm going to point out to you how it is nothing but clown world and chaos. And if you believe otherwise, if you think, well, they haven't said what you say they're going to say, and, they haven't asked for the destruction of America, they don't want that, you are very naive. I'm just going to say it. If you think that They just want a peaceful transition of power into something better, something that doesn't have Trump, something that doesn't have MAGA, and everything's going to be okay. You are incredibly naive. And I'd like to know if you can say the word bah. Can you say that word? Because that's what you are, if you think it is just a peaceful transition of power. So we are going to go over the things right now, which I found online, a whole list of stuff on their agenda. If you are watching the show on Amazon, I'm sorry, you know how I mess up words, YouTube, then please feel free to chime in the comment box. Oh man, I mess up words on this show, but at least you know it's not AI and I'm real and it's not scripted. We're just friends talking. So, the platform, as I've seen it so far by the Democratic Socialists, has been very simple in some places. They basically have said that they just want to make the president elected by Congress and I guess maybe get rid of the Supreme Court. That's it. That's all they want. In other places, I've seen much more extensive lists. And I'm going to read one extensive list that I got from Elliot Davis TV. So this was just one that I thought was good. I'm not saying he is authoritative or the end all be all, but it's a really good list. So in the list of things Democratic Socialists want is eliminating the U.S. Senate, the Supreme Court, and replacing the presidency. Now, I do not know what replacing the presidency means. I'm thinking they want something like the parliamentary system where we won't vote for the president will rise up in the ranks, and everyone in Congress will then decide who will be the president for, 2 to 4 years or something like that. Actually, that's how it is in a local town here. They have the city council, and then every year they choose a new person who will be president. I'm thinking that might be what the Democratic Socialists want. They want a president drawn up from the ranks, and they'll vote on him. So essentially, we'll go back to the days of Washington where people did not vote for the president. That's how Jefferson won against Aaron Burr. It was like 43 votes had to be done before they finally got a winner. And it wasn't all of America voting 43 times, it was the members of Congress voting, or the people who were designated to vote at that time. And that eventually changed. So then we gave a vote to people, and then we have the electoral college and all that stuff. But they basically want to take us back. These Democrat Socialists want to take us back to the days when you won't get a vote. You will vote for your congressperson, and then they will decide who will run the country. And then they will vote for that person, and if they all agree, it's the person you want, or a person you might like, or maybe it's going to be a person you hate, or maybe it's just going to be a pawn like Joe Biden, but you'll have zero say in choosing that person. And before you go and say, well, that could be better because, look, our vote doesn't count, if you go back in time, you will find numerous elections where, yes, votes mattered. Bush Gore. Even better would be Nixon Kennedy. It was a very close call. You may not recall James Blaine, but he was known as Mr. Republican in the 1800s. He was the Secretary of State under Garfield. He ran for president, lost by something that was even closer than Nixon Kennedy. So, yes, your vote does matter. But before we go into other things, as I said, the Democratic Socialists want to eliminate the Senate and get in some new form of presidency and the Supreme Court. Now, I've seen that they want to eliminate it. This is what this guy says. I've also seen that they want a different form of the Senate, but they don't want the Senate as we currently have it. Much like I just said, they don't want the presidency as we currently have it. As for the Supreme Court, I'm not too sure if they even want that at all, or they want something else. But whatever they want, it is different than what we have. So technically, yes, they want to eliminate the 4 sorry, the three bodies of government, replace them with something else, is what they want. Here's the catch to this. If you get rid of those three bodies of government, or even if you drastically redo them so they look completely different, if you have the president chosen from Congress and voted on by Congress, if you don't have a Supreme Court, then why on earth do you need the Constitution? The power of government comes from the Constitution. It, in this country, is derived from that very simple piece of paper. It's amazing that such a piece of paper has such power, but it is true. All power comes from that piece of paper, and that piece of paper designates so many things that have been built upon by, other legislation and other laws, etc., etc. Give me 1 second. I just want to check the sound on my show this morning while this siren is going by. Okay, we're good. Since I'm not wearing my headphones, I have no way of monitoring things, and I've had situations where I've tested something out and then it didn't work. Anyways, the Democratic Socialists want to get rid of our three bodies of government, and if they do that, whatever they say, whatever they advertise themselves as doing, ultimately, the next step is to get rid of the Constitution. Because, as I just said, the power of our government comes from the Constitution. But more than that, the Constitution specifies how government is to run on a basic level. It specifies the distinctiveness of the three bodies. The Constitution specifies how things connect and the checks and balances and how long somebody serves in government. So if you, as a Democratic Socialist, want to completely change Congress and completely change the presidency, you're now going against the Constitution. And if you're getting rid of a Supreme Court, then you're getting rid of something the Constitution asks for. So what's your outcome? Are you going to spend your time passing a zillion amendments to eradicate most of the Constitution? Or are you just going to get rid of it? Well, if you've already gotten rid of the three bodies of government that it creates, there's not much reason to hold on to it at that point, right? Why not just dump it? And that is the goal of the Democratic Socialists, is to dump the Constitution. Nothing less. They won't say that, but that is the goal. They've been saying that for years, though. Before Trump got into office, remember how many liberals were like, well, we got to get rid of the Constitution, or it's horrible. Or I had a friend once say we should have a wiki constitution, which anybody can change. That's insanity. I also had someone say to me, the best constitution would be a blank piece of paper. That is also insanity. We've known that they've wanted to do this, but they stopped saying this when Trump got in office, and suddenly every single Democrat is now pro-Constitution because they want any way to get rid of Trump. Just yesterday, they were saying he should be impeached for saying things about elections, whatever. So they want all this stuff to get rid of him, but they don't care about it at the end of the day. Anyways, they want to get rid of the Constitution. That is the goal, because if you have no presidency or something that looks completely different, you don't need it. Now, what does that mean for you? Well, the Constitution also outlines the relationship between the federal offices and the governors and the state level legislators. If you have no Constitution, then what is the basis for the governor in every state? Where does a governor derive his power? The Constitution is the answer. But if you don't have it, where does he get his power? You could say from the people, so we elect the governor, but how is that election determined? Through local laws. And what are local laws determined by? And state laws determined by? The Constitution. If a state law goes against it, we can't have that state law. So the state law is kept in power by the Constitution. The governor and Congress or your legislative branch, whatever it is all put in power by the Constitution. So if you get rid of the Constitution, all these things don't matter anymore. They don't really matter. And we can drop it down even more. Your mayor is established by rules and regulations that have their essence and basis in the Constitution. So if you have no Constitution, your local mayor has no power. Again, you can say, well, people vote on the mayor, but it's a voting system based on what the Constitution tells you. And if the Democratic Socialists come in with a brand new Constitution, then your voting rights no longer matter. They've been changed, you see. The only person who might be immune from this, honestly, is maybe a city manager, because a city manager is a non-elected position that is hired, like a secretary or something. So that is more like a business, in which case city managers will be safe. So every town of 4,000 to 4,000 people will be safe. And all your big cities will find that their mayors have no power because there's no constitution. Now, if your mayor has no power and your governor has no power, who is in charge of ultimately, like your police force and your fire and your 911? Well, those things all come under, while they might be like 911 is hired out, but essentially those things on some level come under your state and local government structures. Systems are set up for the police. They work in tandem with, the police are not an independent company. They work with taxpayer money. 911 may not have been the best example, but your fire stations work with taxpayer money. Your schools work with taxpayer money. Schools are a better example than ambulances. These things work with taxpayer money. Your roads, public service. But if you have no mayor, that really means you probably also don't have a city council, and you have no city structure to speak of, because your city structure is based on the Constitution, which means who is in charge of your city services. And when I pay taxes in, well, why should I pay taxes at all, right? There's no one going to enforce it. There's no government to pay taxes to. We've gotten rid of the Constitution. Am I wrong about this? I mean, the Constitution is the foundation for our laws and our legal system and our government system. And our government is more than just a mayor. It's now city services. I don't know if the founding fathers envisioned it like that, but it is. It now involves a military, numerous branches of a military. I mentioned to a friend of mine the other day, for 4th of July, he had all the flags out, and I said, "You're missing Space Force." All these things now come under the city, or the city is giving them money, or us taxpayers are giving money to the city, which these people get. And if we have no constitution, then we have no basis for these organizations to be functioning, because they're not businesses, they're just public entities. Public entities are under the Constitution in this situation. If you have no city services, and all you have is private industry, but you also have no government system, you have chaos. And yes, you could say, well, private industry will come together and they'll fix things, but that takes time. It takes time for the private industry to get their shit together and go, okay, we'll be the fire department. We'll take care of that. Or we'll be the organization that funds our public schools. By the time you get to that point, it's going to be chaos. Our teachers won't be paid because there'll be no government writing those checks. So they won't even be there by the time you get your shit together to get the schools together with the private funding. They won't even be there, because everything will collapse very instantly. Think about it. If suddenly tomorrow I said to you that we had no government and no Supreme Court, and that went all the way down to your local mayor, do you really think people would just sit around? No, it would be chaos, because, well, there's no police, really, or the police aren't getting paid by the government entity that isn't paying them. You're not going to collect my taxes. It's going to be chaos. Absolute chaos. Also, the police, if they are interested in still working, are going to have their hands full because technically the Constitution is the basis of our laws, which means anyone who was put in jail was put into jail under a system of laws that no longer are valid. So therefore, is it still valid to keep someone in prison based on a system of laws that doesn't exist anymore? We can debate that for months and months, but the prisoners won't. They're going to riot. So the police are going to be very busy at our prisons trying to keep the prisoners in under a basis of laws that won't exist. Though if you have a court date, you just tell the judge to go screw it because he has no basis in for his power either. All this stuff is outlined on some level by the Constitution. As I said, the Constitution's been expanded upon, but without that, you have no basis. You have no foundation for the House. And as I said at the beginning, that is the goal, because if you're going to wipe out the presidency and you're going to wipe out Congress and you're going to wipe out the Supreme Court, it doesn't stop there by default. You then will wipe out all the courts under it because they all lead up to the Supreme Court. And if you get rid of the top of the building, the others, well, how can I appeal? You've gotten rid of the Supreme Court. If you get rid of the presidency, you've gotten rid of your commander-in-chief. You're going to have to figure out a way of running your military. By the time you do, though, it'll be too late. Probably someone will attack us. It'll be the perfect moment to be attacked. Oh, yeah, another problem. Once our government is gone, what's going to stop other countries from bombing us? It's not like the commander-in-chief can say, go fight, because there will be no commander-in-chief. You see, just getting rid of one thing affects everything. The Constitution says that each state will send a representative. If you get rid of that representative or you change that, you'll change a lot of things. You'll change too many things. And it will create chaos. So that is the goal of the Democratic Socialists. They believe it'll be a peaceful transition. Well, we'll just get rid of the president and we'll completely change Congress. But no, that will trickle down all the way down because again, why would you keep a constitution that outlines all these things that you're now eradicating? Are you going to spend days and days putting amendments on that? No, you're going to just get rid of it, as I said. So that is the ultimate goal of the Democratic Socialists, is the complete collapse of society, except for like businesses and churches and stuff. But again, we all have a government structure that keeps all this safe. And without that, the police may not get paid, which means crime will go through the roof. It will be Escape from New York and Escape from Los Angeles. That is the ultimate goal. It is not a peaceful transition of power. It is chaos. That's the revolution. Now, if you can explain to me how we can get rid of the Constitution but still have a basis of laws and power and have a peaceful transition of Congress, please let me know. But once the Constitution's gone, there is no basis of power. So from which do we derive power for all of these things? Please let me know. In England, it's a little different. So don't use that as an example because England has common law, which we don't have. They have a different legal background, a different legal system, and they also have a queen, which means if you change the prime minister role, it's a different situation. We don't have that. We have everything based on the Constitution, and there's no reason to keep it if you're not going to use it. So that is the end result. Now, the Democratic Socialists have talked about how they'll just make this change and it'll be okay, even though complete overthrows of governments and countries I don't think usually go well, because the thing is the moment they say your presidency is over, we're going to completely change all this. You know how Democratic Socialists do. They have to talk about everything, and they'll have little groups where you don't clap because it's horrible, and you wave your hands, and they'll have to debate shit until the dawn of time because that's what they do. But the moment you say your presidency is over, it's not like the country is going to go, okay, we'll give you 6 months to figure out how to create a new government. No, what's going to happen is One guy is going to stand up in Idaho and go, "Hey, I just want you all to know I declare myself the President of the United States. I knew this was coming. I am now the President, and the head of America is now in Boise." The end. If you don't have a constitution, what's to say he can't do that? You've already overthrown the government. There is no government. We're not going to sit here for 6 months and let the Democratic Socialists figure one out. And even if they had a plan, it's going to take time to implement it. So there's a gap. There's a vacuum. And in that vacuum, what happens? Somebody walks into it. That is what will happen. Or the Democratic Socialists will walk into it and go, "You know what? We can't spend 6 months, so therefore we declare ourselves kings and queens. And that's it. Now we run the country and we're going to have a dictatorship and figure it out." They'll do it. They'll just skip the whole let's debate in sessions forever. No, they'll just go right to it. That's what happens. If you do not have a government, somebody will step into it. That's kind of what Hitler did. The government of Germany was collapsing. The Constitution was in tatters, and he was easily able to step into that spot. Even Stalin, in some way, was able to do it. Things weren't working well, and he was able to take the power he had and just lift it up. That's what will happen. Also, the Constitution unites every single state into a union. But if we do not have that, what is the basis of the union? Why should any state declare that they are going to hang out with another one in a country which has no government? So theoretically, the union is over. So that guy in Idaho who just declared himself president, theoretically, he could say, "I declare Idaho for my kingdom." And now he's a separate country. And can you honestly say, well, he can't do that according to what body? You've gotten rid of all the government and agencies. Now there is another option, and that is, well, they're going to overthrow Congress and then they'll overthrow the presidency. But again, the moment you disrupt any of these groups, you're going to ruin the Constitution. You're going to mess things up. It's going to trickle down, and they'll be like, well, why are we waiting? Let's just demolish it all. So that is the future that Democratic Socialists want. It's not going to be an easy transition of power. It's going to be a destruction of society on every single level, the destruction of the union, and then a dictatorship. It may be a dictatorship of the socialists. It might be a dictatorship of, I don't know, Christian nationalists. It could be a dictatorship of Hare Krishna followers, for all we know. And honestly, who's going to fight them? Who's going to fight them? The military that's lost its commander-in-chief that isn't getting paid because there's no tax money coming in because no one feels like they have to pay taxes anymore? Are they going to stop it? Who knows? Who knows? We've seen this play out many, many times. We've seen countries collapse. There's many variations that this could take. It's often bloody. It's often violent. But that is the end result, is an overthrow and a destruction of society. Now, let's keep going because there's more things that the Democrat Socialists want. It's not just an end of society. They want the Green New Deal. So once they take power, let's just say they become dictators in the new government, because that would make sense. And they'll tell you climate change, yada, yada, and you got to do this, and you got to do this, and don't do this. Oh, John Kerry, where are you going in your flight all alone? Yeah, that's okay. You can do that. But you can't do that. They're then going to tell you what to do. The Green New Deal is a little dictatorship based on questionable science. So they're telling you right there, but they want that. They want a dictatorship. Even if they rearrange other things, they kind of want a dictatorship. They also want to cut funding for the military. So I don't know who's going to be the new commander-in-chief, but they're going to cut funding for the military. Okay, and someone will attack us. You may say, well, no, China's not going to attack us, and probably Russia wouldn't either. They're not stupid, but there is people out there. You never know what they might do. Also, isn't our border patrol part of, well, it's part of the government. I know if military folks go to the border patrol or assist the border patrol or where they fall in the government family tree, but certainly if you don't have a government, then do you have a border patrol? And now who's to say that groups coming up from the south will they'll just overthrow that lone soldier standing there defending the border? There's no border patrol. They'll just take it over and declare Texas is now part of Mexico again. What's to stop them? Without a constitution, there's no union. Texas is now just an area. It's got to defend itself, but there's no governor, technically. And there's no military. We've cut funding for the military. Kind of like defunding the police, too. Oh, that's also on the list. We're going to defund the police and we're going to cut the military. Of course, because when you overthrow the government, like they're going to do when you have a dictatorship, you don't want anybody rising up. So you're probably going to do that before anything. As soon as you get in Congress, you're going to swipe all the paychecks so no one can fight back. And then, well, without a constitution, also Sharia law courts can now be established without any problem. Just don't go against climate change. Unless you're Islam, then Muslim, then we'll probably let you. They also want to end military aid to Israel because God knows they're not biased. God knows they hate Jews. They want to reduce prisons. But let's be honest, there won't be any prisons because they'll get rid of the Constitution, and thus the laws keeping the prisoners there will be gone. So we want to have no military to protect us from chaotic forces in the world, which do exist. Even if you think they don't attack us because they can't win. But if the head of North Korea thinks that he might attack us and there's no military to fight him back, who's to say he won't? Do you think China's going to stand up for us? Oh, no, don't fight America. No, go ahead and fight. They'll be like, yes, do it. And then we'll just buy everything up afterwards because the only people immune are businesses. They'll be happy if we destroy ourselves. People don't fight us because we have a president and a big military. But if we don't have any of that, we've defunded the military. We have no president. There's no basis for a military because it's all just independent groups. Yeah, North Korea might actually just attack us. I mean, wouldn't you? If you didn't think you were going to be attacked back, why not? You think Canada's going to defend America? No. So that's the future, is chaos and crime. So we're going to have less prisons, and we're going to have no police force, and we're going to have no laws, and we're going to have pure chaos on the streets. It's going to be Escape from New York. That is the democratic socialist future. And if you don't believe that, then explain to me how you can overthrow the country and have our laws, but yet you have a document that you don't recognize and yet have any of these things intact. Or if you think, well, people get along really nice. No, they won't. If there is no government and no police and no nothing, do you really think they won't fight each other at the local grocery store? They already fight each other at Walmart. They won't give a shit. So, also, on top of this, they want to dismantle capitalism. Because, capitalism's so bad, as we found it in the recent Guru's Debunked video I did on Marianne Williamson, capitalism has failed because poor people are poor. No, sorry. She said democracy has failed because poor people are poor, because the goal of democracy is to help poor people. Thus, also capitalism has failed. As I said earlier, though, when we lose our constitution, we lose all of our government entities. What will be standing will be churches, because they're not government entities, private individuals, and also corporations. Corporations can probably stand up. Businesses can probably stand up because they're not based on the Constitution. There now will be laws they may not have to abide by and things they may not have to do, but they will stand up. But under the Democratic Socialist platform, they want to get rid of capitalism. So basically, they want to get rid of the only remaining structures that are standing under their dictatorship. If you get rid of capitalism and replace it with this Marxism thing, well, you're going to have some governing body, and we know it's going to be a dictatorship. So that's what they want. They don't want just getting rid of the government. They want getting rid of what remains after they get rid of the government. Of course, they also say that they're going to place the economy under a working class body that will control it, but that is bullshit of bullshit. We know that won't happen. We know that once people get in power, they're not going to be like, oh, yes, Mr. Janitor, I'm going to give you my job. Don't worry about it. We're going to trade jobs. No, no, that's not going to happen. So basically, they want a complete overhaul. So my second screenshot here says that they are proposing a democratic constitution. So earlier, I was hypothesizing just in a little bit we had that they wanted to get rid of the constitution, but they're proposing a new one. So yes, I was right. They actually want to get rid of the Constitution. They're not just going to keep it the way it is and then add to it. They want to get rid of it. So they want to get rid of the presidency, Congress, and Supreme Court, which means by default, the governorships and all these other things are going to be shaky. They want to get rid of the Constitution as it stands. They're going to have a different one, a democratic one, instead of the republic one we have. But by then, it's going to be too late because everything will have fallen apart. Their constitution will call for eradication of the Supreme Court and the Senate, and their proposition will have a single legislative body, so it'd be like the Senate, with a president and judiciary subordinate to it. So it won't be three equal players or three players with different duties. It'll be a single body, likely run by the workers, that'll run everything. That doesn't sound very good. We already have issues with crooked judges. Can you imagine what a Supreme Court would look like if it was under the control and subordinate to a crooked government? Can you possibly imagine what that would look like? Wow, judges won't last long. So basically, they want to eradicate everything. And if you get rid of, and if your judiciary is underneath your Congress, of course, as I said, this is going to get rid of everything. And to rewrite a constitution nullifies the previous constitution. So, yeah, they want to get rid of everything. Everything. And the capitalist structures that still stand. Because you can't just replace one constitution with another because all the power is derived from the first one. You can't just suddenly one day say, hey, now you're all under this. Yeah, you can, but it doesn't work like that. So the Democratic Socialists want to end society as you know it and turn it into crime, chaos, and escape from New York. It's almost a waste of time to list the rest of the stuff they want because I don't think they would ever make it that far into government because, as I said, the moment they end the current Constitution, all someone has to do is say, I'm the president. That's it. The Democratic Socialists can't say, oh, well, we have that job earmarked. No, it's too late. What power do you have? How should I phrase this? If the Democratic Socialists destroy the Constitution, what gives them the power to declare that they're the ones to replace it versus some guy in Idaho? He says he has the power. You say you have the power. What gives either of these groups power? Well, currently, nothing. So they're equal. So they'll never get the chance to do anything else they want to destroy capitalism or anything else. But let's just see what else is on their list. They want to implement universal health care. What a surprise. What a surprise. And there'll be no private health insurance. Well, they're going to get rid of capitalism anyways, so that's going to be eradicated by default. They want a single-payer system into a government, which is all going to be run by this one little entity. They want a 32-hour work week without loss of pay, instituting a federal jobs program, and establishing universal rent control and canceling student debt. So nobody's going to have student debt, and the only way to make that happen is that everybody from here on out never has to pay student loans or a college at all. Or you can pay for college, or you can get a loan. And if you have a loan, you won't have to pay it back. If I've paid for college, then I don't have a debt. So you can just pay up for college straight up, is what they're saying. So that's the way colleges will then work. in this new structure that won't be capitalist because they're going to get rid of that. Um, Colleges will just say, "Hey, you give us $1,000, you get your education." There will be no more student loans. And you can't cancel all debt now and then expect the next generation to pay debt. So you have to stop this forever. No college can ever charge ever because that wouldn't be any fair if everyone is wiped out of debt today, but then my kids have to have debt. So you have to end that. But that's okay. We're going to end capitalism anyways. Um, they want to establish universal rent control, which means your apartment will look like shit. Eventually it will. The landlord won't take care of it. We will all be living in dire straits. Rent control prevents money coming into a landlord. I know it sounds good on paper, but it really doesn't work for keeping your building maintained. So, as prices skyrocket in this economy that no longer has capitalism and where prices are going to go insane because it's going to be a free for all, your landlord won't have enough money. And so, when your toilet breaks, well, it just breaks. Shit in the street. That's what's going to happen. And there's not going to be any desire for them to fix it. There's no profit in it for them. We're going to get rid of all capitalism. All of this is going to be gone. It's literally going to be like, oh, it's going to be insane. And I love how they say we're going to have a 32-hour work without loss of pay, except who's going to want to work in this non-capitalist society? Well, they're going to force us to work a 32-hour. We're all going to have to work a 32-hour work for companies which don't make any money. And oh my God, you imagine what customer service will look like when there's no incentive you don't give a shit about your business? Because, well, how can we actually have a 32-hour work week in a country with no, well, I mean, we can in a non-capitalist country, but you're going to, it, it doesn't look good. It doesn't look good. Please research what Lenin did when he took power. He took away privatization of businesses. He put everything under the state and everything collapsed. It fell apart. And it was a major crisis. It literally fell apart. People stopped caring. Didn't matter. But it's really interesting. So you're going to guarantee everyone works 32 hours in a non-capitalist country where no one's going to really make any profit, but we're not going to really have any. Well, I mean, like I said, at this point, it doesn't even matter. Enforcing a 32-hour work week isn't going to matter because the country's already going to be in chaos. Once you get rid of the Constitution, it's all done anyways. And like I said, who are you to then say, well, I'm your next government. You got to obey me. Why? Why do I have to obey you? I own guns. Why do I have to obey you? Who decided that you would be the next government? You see, so they have no basis for power. They'll never get to the point where we're discussing 32-hour work week and giving money to Israel or whatever, or forcing the Green New Deal economy on everybody. And defunding police departments. We're never going to get to a federal jobs program because technically the federal government is set up by the Constitution, but you got rid of that. So you'll only have Washington, D.C. That'll be your program because all the other states are probably going to walk away. There's no, or they'll do their own thing. You'll never get to this point. So it's even retarded for me to discuss the things they want. But it's all a liberal agenda. If you know this liberal agenda these days, you got it. Free Medicare for all, small work week so we can all sit around and write poetry for the rest of the time, universal rent control so we all will pay $100 for rent forever and our apartments will turn into shit. We'll never have any student debt. We won't have to worry about capitalist, evil, horrible people. We'll all be healthy. Yeah. Uh, there's not going to be any cops. Let's see, what else does this say? We're going to have a non-interventionist foreign policy without a military. um, we're going to broadly expand immigration rights, but we don't have any military to enforce the border, so I don't give a shit. I don't think they're going to care anyways, and I don't think they're going to want to come into America, which is going to be fighting. We're going to defund police departments and combat mass incarceration. That is the current lineup of what they want. I may have missed some things, and I have been speaking in broad terms. But the fact is, You don't have to go very far in their list. You just have to go a little bit to see that there's no way the Constitution can stand if we get rid of the three bodies of government. But they don't want it to stand. They want a completely new Constitution. That's as far as we have to go in this discussion, because once we do that, all of society collapses. And then the next step is you have the end of capitalism. That's it. You've wiped everybody out except for churches. Churches are neither, well, I guess they are probably for profit, or they will be at that point. But the rest of their agenda will never happen because they want a complete destruction of our country as we know it. They want to make us into a brand new country by eradicating everything you know. There will be nothing you will be able to turn to when there is no government, when there is no police. There's nothing. And who will give them the right, as I have said, to declare they're the next government? Why? Why aren't I the next government? I'm going to say I am. You can't declare, well, we have a new constitution, but you haven't enacted it yet. You got rid of the old one. Currently, there is no constitution. So therefore, what I say is just as good as you. We'll just fight it out. Whoever kills each other will be the new winner. And that will be what it is. And that is the future they want. There'll be no, and if they get into power, it will be hell. There'll be no capitalist structures. There'll be no nothing. It'll be hell. We'll all fall apart. Excuse me, 1 second. I need a drink. I'm trying to think what would happen if they actually managed to get into power and set up this new country and then tried to institute lack of privatization. They would institute a government control of entity, government control of everything. Excuse me. The only thing I can think of, well, I think of two things. One is Pol Pot, who went and murdered people and is worse than Hitler. That lasted, what, 10 years? He just destroyed people. I think of China. Actually, three things now. I think of China, which had the revolution that destroyed lives. And I think of Lenin coming into power. I really do recommend that you read about Lenin entering power and what he did upon gaining power. He was not successful. It was chaotic. It wasn't functional. Yes, Russia was a rough country, a little bit backwoods, and he was trying to fix that, which is understandable and fine, but that is not what happened. Far from it. And people who were like, "Oh yeah, Lenin, we'd love to have you in power," were not happy about what he then did, and he destroyed their lives. Everything was chaos, and he had to go back on his plans more than once, and he made a lot of mistakes. He kind of proved himself to be a lousy leader. I don't know if anyone ever thought he was going to be a good leader, but he was a bad person who did bad things, even if his goal was something different. And I believe that the goal of the Democratic Socialists is to improve life. They're obsessed with Trump, though, but I think they want things better. They feel that life is hard. I understand. Oh, I so understand that. But once they enact their plans, the little bit of comfort that I have will go away because everything will collapse. It won't make life better. We'll just now be all fighting to survive. Literally fighting with guns. I truly believe that. Uh, Life is hard. I think it's harder now than when I was younger. I don't know if the world's a worse place. I think it just always sort of is good and bad. But I know things are a struggle, and I'm facing some struggles in my near future, which I'll be talking about this on this channel soon. Uh, I understand getting out of school, you can't get a job, and you got debt, and you get all this stuff that seems unfair and horrible. But I'm going to tell you right now, to overthrow everything will get rid of the few things that you enjoy. That Starbucks coffee is going to be gone because there won't be any Starbucks because if you don't have a capitalist country, so the little things you like are going to be gone. I know right now rent is hard and you want to rent on the internet, but the internet companies are not going to exist if you get rid of capitalism. Who's going to want to who's going to run a company that can't make a profit? You're going to find getting rid of everything, getting rid of the things you hate will end up getting rid of everything. There will be no place of comfort that you can go to. That is the result of their plan, which they don't seem to see because they're not far-sighted. No, I know what it is. They think they're the smartest people in the room. I know a couple Democratic Socialists here in ultra-liberal Portland, Maine, former Grand Platnerk territory. Wow, that was a shocking turn of events there. But they think they're the smartest people in the room. They absolutely think they're the smartest people in the room. And I know one of them has actually said, yeah, I know about everything. Literally said that to somebody. I know about everything. They are also incredibly selfish and entitled. Had an argument with one who thought that the janitor for your business was also responsible for cleaning your dishes in the sink and cleaning your desk and taking food off of it that you just left there for the bugs. No, that's not what our janitors are for, or your janitors are for. You're just very entitled, very selfish. So these people think they're the smartest people in the world, and they don't see the big picture of where this leads. It leads to chaos. It leads to, you know, Escape from New York. There's no question about that. There is no transition of power like they want that will not be bloody. Because that's the only way they're going to be able to enforce themselves as they are the legal heirs to the new America. They won't be able to do it without using force. That is the future of the democratic socialist America. It's not socialism. It will be a dictatorship of absolute control. And my last thought, it will be absolute control because once we get rid of the Constitution, once we get rid of our laws, once we get rid of our police, once all these things just collapse naturally, the chaos will be so out of control, there will be nothing left to do other than some martial law. Of course, you can't have that because you have no government. But if they instill themselves as the government and they manage to make it happen, they can't just suddenly declare, oh, well, we all have a 32-hour work week. No, they won't be able to do that because the chaos on the streets will be so out of control. The number one thing they will have to do when they get into power is to stop the chaos that will be on the streets, to stop the fighting. I don't know how they're going to do that because they also want to defund the police at the same time, or the police department may not even exist by then, may have fallen apart. So I don't know what they're going to use, but that is the thing they will have to do first. You can't instill a 32-hour work week if companies aren't doing anything and people are fighting in the streets. That is, I mean, seriously imagine Escape from New York. Put yourself into Kurt Russell's position. What if he walked in on his mission and went, hey, all you on the street, 32-hour work week, universal health care. They would laugh at him. It's meaningless. And he'd be like, yeah, but I have the power of the president behind me. Look, I've got this thing on my wrist. And they would still laugh at him. They're caring about food. They're caring about power. It would be, well, mobs would develop. I'm not talking about MAGA. I'm talking about mobs like the mafia. I'm talking about, actually, maybe nationalist groups would rise up. It would be pure chaos. So they're never even going to get to that step. If they step into power, it's going to be absolute chaos. And the only way to solve it is through bloodshed. And they will murder anyone. And some of these democratic socialists would be happy to murder MAGA just because MAGA is MAGA. They don't care. They will just go out and start shooting people. They will create the society that they think we have currently. A horrible, horrible society. They will create that. That's what they want. And with that, I'm going to end this. I know this show has gone long. Part of it is because I have detailed these ideas, and the way I think is by fleshing out the ideas live and talking about them. And as I talk, I think of things. And while I was doing this, I was also trying to think, well, okay, could this be? So I'm trying to really flesh out the idea, because one of the things I hate is these YouTubers who do a 5-minute video and saying something completely soundbite-ish, but don't flesh it out. And I don't want to be like that. I'd rather sit here for a while and repeat myself a little bit, but at least the ideas are clear and we are really honing in on them versus just rash reactionary. And we're trying to think logical here. So that's why this show's gone for about an hour. You'll excuse me. Love to have your comments down below on what you think. Please check out this show and my other shows. I also have some t-shirts and stickers that I'm selling. You can see the link in my YouTube underneath the videos. You'll see a link to these things. Because yes, society sucks. And I think society is a scam, which is one of the t-shirts, a couple of t-shirts actually. But I like it better than other things. And I've lived in Japan and Hungary, and, we're not doing as bad as you think you are. So, those are my words of wisdom. Don't overthrow this country, please. And until you do, or if you don't do it, support this channel by buying a t-shirt, a sticker, or commenting, or send me an email. All that stuff is really great. And I will catch you later on the next episode and the next talk. We're going to be doing the Book of Mormon soon. I've read it, and we're going to be dissecting that and returning to Adolf Hitler and his look in Mein Kampf are on the agenda for the next few weeks, along with some other things. So please subscribe, and yeah, I look forward to your comments. Thank you all. Have a good day.